How to use dimensions. This is a report that was generated from the Knapp Online system that shows all of my income and expenses for the Knapp account codes. Knapp Online allows you to break down your income and expenses by adding categories or sub-accounts. This optional feature is called dimensions. In this video, I am going to show examples of various ways to use dimensions. Knapp Online allows you to have two levels of dimensions, Type 1 and Type 2. Determining which type of dimension to use depends on how your region wants to track your income and expenses. Type 1 dimensions are typically used for categories. Some examples of categories are fall, spring, board positions, extra, tournament teams, or a tournament your region hosts. A Type 2 dimension can be used in one of two ways, either as sub-accounts for greater detail of the already existing Knapp account codes, for example, paint, maintenance, or trash for field expenses, or as subcategories, for example, tracking specific tournament teams in a tournament group. This year, I want to track my fall and spring seasons. To do this, I need to create the Type 1 dimensions. From the Dimensions tab, I select Dimension Entry. The first thing I notice is the dimension reference. I am creating the dimension fall, so I'm going to use the reference F. You can make the reference any combination of letters and numbers, and it can be used to expand on the dimension name. I will enter the name fall, and since fall is a main category and not a sub-account or subcategory, I will select Type 1 from the drop-down. Then select Add to save the dimension. I want to create spring as well, so I will select Enter a new dimension. I'm creating the dimension spring, so I'm going to use the reference S. I will enter the name spring and again select the Type 1 from the drop-down. Finally, select Add to save the dimension. After my dimensions are created, I can start to use them when coding my deposits and payments so that the amounts show in my report properly. Let's record a payment using the newly created dimensions. From the Banking and General Ledger tab, select Record Payments. I will enter the payment information with the date, check number, supplier, and Knapp account code. Here is where I will select the fall dimension, which you can see under the Dimension 1 drop-down since it is a Type 1 dimension. I am purchasing soccer balls, and this year my region wants to have greater detail for the equipment Knapp account code 5130. In order to record this payment properly, I need to create a Type 2 dimension for soccer balls. Select the Dimensions tab, then select Dimension Entry. You can make the reference any combination of letters and numbers. I'm creating the dimension soccer balls, so I'm going to use the reference of E1 to stand for Equipment 1. I will enter the name soccer balls and then select the Type 2 dimension because it is a sub-account. Select Add to save the dimension. Now I can use this dimension when recording my payment. I will go back to the Record Payment screen from the Banking and General Ledger tab and record my payment. Notice that my new dimension of soccer balls now appear in the Type 2 drop-down. One thing to notice is how the dimension reference sorts the dimensions within the drop-down. The system sorts by numbers and then letters. However, it does this by comparing each column separately. If I had 5 items with the dimension references of E10, E20, E100, E2, EA1, they would be sorted as E10, E100, E2, E20, EA1. I have entered the other deposits and payments using the same method you just saw, and now I will run a report that shows how my payments and deposits are displayed. You can see it is broken down by fall and spring, which I created earlier as Type 1 dimensions. The report also shows the Type 2 dimensions for various Knapp account codes. Next to each dimension name is a dimension reference, which is F, S, E1, and E2. Notice how every dimension is listed underneath each Knapp account code and the corresponding monetary amount for that dimension is on the right. If you did not record a transaction using a dimension, it will list the amount across from the Knapp account code. There is also a total for each account displayed here. The report will stay the same in how it looks, but the names will vary depending on what your region tracks. For example, I can track summer and winter, or I can track by bank accounts by creating each account as a Type 1 dimension. You can design these categories in any way that fits the tracking needs of your region. The system allows you to have as many Type 1 and Type 2 dimensions as needed. I can run this report again to view only one of my Type 1 dimensions, for example, spring. Under the Equipment NAP account code, you can see all my Type 2 dimensions providing greater detail for the purchases made for my spring season. Or I can rerun this report for any Type 1 dimensions to view specific details for only that dimension. Another use of dimensions is that you can track the income and expenses for each tournament team. To do this, I will set up a Type 1 dimension of tournament teams and Type 2 dimensions for each team. From the Dimensions tab, I select Dimension Entry. I'm creating the dimension Tournament Teams, so I'm going to use the reference of T1. I will enter the name Tournament Teams and select Type 1 from the drop-down. Then select Add to save the dimension. Now I want to create all my tournament teams, so I will select Enter a New Dimension. I'm creating the dimension Boys U14, so I'm going to use the reference of BU14-A. I will enter the name of the coach and select Type 2 from the drop-down because this team is a subcategory. Finally, select Add to save the dimension. I will repeat this process for all of my teams and start to use them when coding my deposits and payments so that the amounts show in my report properly. I can select any of the Type 1 dimensions such as tournament teams and see all of my team's income and expenses. I want to draw your attention to the dimension reference and how it can expand on the dimension name. I can also run this report to see the income and expenses for a specific team. In order for reports to display accurately, dimensions must be selected from their corresponding drop-downs in the payment and deposit screens. To view and edit dimensions, go to the Dimensions Maintenance screen. If you have not recorded a payment or deposit using a dimension, you can change the type of a dimension or delete a dimension by selecting the pencil icon. You can tell if you have ever made a payment or deposit using a dimension if there is a balance in this column. You can edit the name of any dimension at any time, but not the reference. You can also close a dimension at any time, which will remove it from the drop-down listing in the payment and deposit screens. If you have previously recorded a transaction to a now closed dimension during the current year, it will continue to show on your reports. Dimensions are a dynamic and powerful reporting tool that can be customized to fit your region's needs. The possibilities are endless. I highly recommend you log into the demo site to test out the use of dimensions.